Matt Richtell, How We Grow Up, Understanding Adolescence. Teens today are lazy, rude, and phone-obsessed. Or are they behaving exactly how they're supposed to? This groundbreaking perspective will completely reframe how you see adolescence. Drawing on cutting-edge neuroscience and compelling historical examples, this blink reveals why teenage brains are literally wired to prioritize strangers over parents, how social media acts as an emotional amplifier, and why today's inward-focused generation represents a new kind of exploration. Rather than viewing teenage rebellion and mental health struggles as problems to solve, you'll discover how these behaviors serve a crucial evolutionary purpose. Whether you're a parent, an educator, or anyone seeking to understand our rapidly changing world, this blink offers both compassion and clarity for navigating the beautiful chaos of growing up. A note before we begin. This blink discusses suicide and depression. Please take care while listening or reading, and seek support from a medical professional if you need to. America, built by teenage revolution. If you ever were one, you'll remember, being a teen isn't easy. But being a teen today can seem even harder than it used to be. Mental health emergencies among youth have increased substantially over the past decade, and suicide rates are climbing. Instead of the risky behaviors that once worried parents, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, young people now struggle more with internal battles like depression, self-harm, and despair. But what if the crisis isn't just about troubled teens who need fixing? What if it reveals something fundamental about how human societies evolve? Take Thomas, a passionate 14-year-old who snuck glitter into a Utah government building during a 2014 marriage equality protest. As the adults debated inside, he scattered his sparkling ammunition, shouting "Equality!" as opponents hurled bottles at him. To many, he looked like a typical disruptive teenager. Yet, Thomas descended from Francis Billington, another 14-year-old troublemaker, aboard the Mayflower. During the voyage, Francis fired his father's musket at a barrel of gunpowder, nearly blowing up the ship. Fortunately, he missed his mark. But Francis wasn't done pushing boundaries. His restless curiosity led him to climb a tall tree and spot what he thought was a vast, uncharted ocean. The colonists named it after him, though his great discovery turned out to be merely a sizable pond. Both boys shared the same rebellious energy, separated by centuries. Francis helped build a new nation. Thomas fought to expand its definition of equality. Neither was simply acting out. They were fulfilling adolescence's hidden function. Young people naturally push boundaries and question established ways of thinking. This is not a bug in human development. It's a feature. Each generation needs pioneers willing to venture into unexplored territory, test new ideas, and return with innovations that help society adapt. Today's adolescents face unique pressures while trying to fulfill this role. They mature physically at a younger age, navigate addictive technology, and process overwhelming volumes of information. Their developing brains struggle to handle these modern demands. Rather than treating teenage rebellion as pathology, we need to understand its purpose. These young people aren't broken. They're testing tomorrow's possibilities while we cling to yesterday's certainties. Turning inwards. Across the eras, teenage brains have served the same purpose. Yet, today's teen brains are facing challenges unlike those their predecessors dealt with. Instead of grappling with the physical frontiers their predecessors explored, they are turning inward. They're diving deep into questions of identity, purpose, and meaning in ways that previous generations never had the luxury to contemplate. This inward focus has created a generation of young people who are evolutionary explorers of the mind, rather than the conquerors of distant lands. The digital age amplifies this internalization. Today's teens confront an astronomical flood of information, choices, and perceived threats. They have unprecedented freedom, but also face paralyzing uncertainty about which path to choose. This shift is profound and measurable. While physical risks among teenagers have plummeted dramatically over the past 2 decades, with alcohol use, binge drinking, and teen pregnancy all falling by nearly half, mental health struggles have surged. Emergency room visits for self-harm among adolescents doubled between 2001 and 2020. Consider Henry, a bright, curious teenager who entertained his family by creating characters like the unreliable historian. When COVID-19 disrupted his structured world, he spiraled into a desperate need for control. Unable to manage the chaos around him, he restricted his eating to just 700 calories a day during a crucial growth period, eventually requiring hospitalization for malnutrition. His story illustrates how modern adolescents often retreat inward when they feel overwhelmed, seeking control through potentially destructive means. Yet, this inward exploration isn't inherently negative. Consider the journey of Anna, a young person who discovered their true gender identity through careful self-reflection. Despite facing periods of anxiety and self-harm along the way, Anna ultimately found their authentic self-expression and became Thomas, a teen who protested for equal rights with glitter. This transformation shows how the same introspective tendencies that can lead to mental health struggles can also result in profound personal growth and self-discovery. Adolescent risk-taking hasn't disappeared. It's simply moved more from the physical world to the psychological realm. Today's teenagers are pioneering new territories of human consciousness, exploring questions of identity and meaning that were once considered settled. Understanding this shift is crucial for supporting them through their unique developmental challenges. The not-so-ancient science of being a teen. Teens were always teens, right? Sort of. What we call adolescence is actually a remarkably recent invention. For most of human history, there was no such thing as a teenager. Just children who quickly transitioned to adult work and responsibilities. For much of human history, most young people were working full-time by the age of 12. There was no time for self-reflection or identity crises when survival was the priority. Our contemporary image of the troubled, emotional teenager largely stems from 18th century Romantic literature. Stories about passionate young lovers facing internal conflict created new expectations about what this stage of life should look like. That period is also the time when people first became interested in studying the teenage brain. Early researchers proposed that teenagers were biologically programmed to replay humanity's primitive evolutionary stages. Such theories seem laughable today, but they laid the groundwork for a better, more systematic understanding of adolescence. Modern science reveals something quite remarkable. The transition to adulthood serves as nature's method for generating human variety and innovation. This process starts in the womb, when genetic material undergoes special mixing that creates unique combinations in each individual. Yet many of these genetic variations remain inactive until hormonal changes during puberty activate them. Adolescence represents the brain's most dramatic transformation since infancy. This biological renovation follows a simple rule. If it's no use, cut it loose. Unused neural pathways disappear. Frequently used ones develop protective sheaths that dramatically increase processing speed. Take Jim Allison, a boy so stubborn his family called him Diamond Head. His teen years were marked by conflicts with teachers over discussing forbidden topics like evolution. Once, he caused a laboratory explosion while trying to improve a cleaning process. That same determined questioning eventually earned him a Nobel Prize for developing revolutionary cancer treatments. His adolescent defiance wasn't simply disruptive behavior. It represented his brain developing the persistent curiosity that would define his scientific breakthroughs. This biological drive toward questioning and innovation isn't a flaw in human development. Rather, it is the essential mechanism that enables each generation to advance beyond the limitations of the previous one. Why teens hate their parents. Have you ever marveled at how teens decide to stop listening to their parents practically overnight? Well, recent neuroscience has uncovered a startling truth. Adolescent brains are literally rewired to prioritize strangers over family members. In a groundbreaking experiment, researchers had teenagers listen to nonsense words spoken by their own mothers and by unfamiliar women. Brain scans revealed that the reward centers in teens' brains lit up more intensely for the strangers' voices than for their own mothers. This wasn't teenage rebellion or attitude. It was hardwired biology, pushing them to seek new social connections that are essential for adult survival. This discovery is part of a larger revolution in understanding adolescence. The teenage brain operates on what scientists call the dual systems model, an evolutionary mismatch where the accelerator develops before the brakes. The reward-seeking, risk-taking parts of the brain mature first, flooding teenagers with dopamine and making novel experiences irresistibly appealing. Meanwhile, the impulse control and risk assessment systems lag behind, creating the classic teenage combination of poor judgment and intense sensation-seeking. But modern teenagers face a perfect storm. Not only are their brains hypersensitive to social information, but puberty is starting dramatically earlier than in previous generations. Girls as young as 6 now show signs of puberty, a shift linked to rising obesity rates and abundant nutrition that tells bodies they have enough energy for reproduction. Simultaneously, today's teens navigate an information-saturated world that their brains weren't designed for. Modern adolescents process endless streams of social media, global peer pressure, and academic competition. The result is generation rumination. Teenagers whose ancient brain wiring clashes dramatically with modern environments. Their struggles aren't character flaws, but natural consequences of Stone Age brains trying to navigate the information age. This biology helps explain why adolescence has become more prolonged and challenging, even as material conditions have improved. Social media, Satan, savior, or echo chamber. Who to blame for the increased difficulty of navigating adolescence? Social media is a popular culprit, and for good reason. Yet, social media's impact on teenagers isn't as straightforward as many believe. Rather than uniformly harming or helping young people, these platforms act more like what researchers describe as a volume knob. They amplify whatever emotional state someone already has. Teens who come from supportive families and have higher self-esteem often find connection and inspiration online. But those who are vulnerable, dealing with anxiety, depression, or family rejection, can find themselves drowning in negativity. Consider Courtney, who received her first iPad at age 10, just as early puberty brought dramatic physical changes. Overwhelmed by acne and bodily transformations, she turned to online communities for acceptance. She created a more mature online persona, claiming to be 17, which brought the positive attention she craved, but also unwanted sexual messages and images from adult men. Despite feeling frightened and confused by this harassment, Courtney felt stuck. The digital realm had become her primary social space, even though it came with disturbing elements she couldn't navigate. This story demonstrates the crucial concept called differential susceptibility. The idea that social media's effects depend heavily on who's using it and their existing mental state. Adolescents like Courtney, already struggling with self-image and coming from families with mental health challenges, are particularly susceptible to online harm. However, social media represents just one aspect of a broader environmental shift. The real issue is that digital engagement is replacing other, healthier habits. Teen sleep has dropped by 30% since 2007, while physical activity participation has fallen dramatically. This creates a harmful combination: reduced engagement in activities that support mental health, paired with increased time and spaces that can intensify negative feelings. Once again, teen brains seem to be mismatched to modern conditions. Contemporary teens reach puberty earlier than previous generations, heightening their sensitivity to social information precisely when they're bombarded with unprecedented amounts of it. Their developing brains seek exploration and social connection, but the cognitive centers responsible for processing complex information are still maturing. It's like operating a high-performance vehicle with an underdeveloped steering system. These dynamics help explain why some adolescents flourish in our connected world, while others struggle significantly. And they may help us guard teens from the negative influences of social media. Growing up and moving on. Adolescence is a puzzling paradox. Young people must somehow break away from their families and establish traditions while maintaining the connections and values that ground them. Their still developing brains mean they're simultaneously creative and destructive, confident and terrified, innovative and disruptive. Thus, the journey from adolescence to adulthood is rarely straightforward, filled with both triumphs and heartbreaking setbacks. While some young people successfully navigate their way to stability and purpose, others face tragic endings that remind us how fraught this transition can be. Remember Henry, the teen who struggled with severe eating disorders? Just when his recovery seemed within reach, he had begun eating sweets again and expressed a genuine desire to heal. Henry accessed his family's gun safe and took his own life. His parents were stunned, since he was the family member who most hated weapons. But for teens, suicide often strikes impulsively. The deadly combination of a moment of crisis and easy access to lethal means destroyed a life. Young people push boundaries in ways that feel threatening to older generations. Sometimes this feature of adolescence jeopardizes teen safety. Yet it's essential for adaptation and progress. Many, like Thomas, successfully navigate major identity transitions and find happiness within strong family relationships. Others face far more perilous journeys, shaped by circumstances beyond their control. Lindsay's teen rebellion escalated from drug lookout to dealer to participating in armed violence before she turned 18. Her involvement culminated in a 15-year prison sentence for attempted armed robbery. Yet even after serving over a decade behind bars, Lindsay managed to rebuild her life through legitimate work, demonstrating remarkable resilience despite ongoing financial struggles and the constant temptation to return to easier but destructive paths. What emerges from these varied journeys is that teenagers need enormous investment and faith from the adults around them. Growing up isn't just an individual process. It is a collective challenge requiring older generations to learn how to love, lead, and ultimately let go with grace. The key lies in providing both compassion and boundaries while teaching young people to eventually find validation within themselves. The main takeaway of this blink to How We Grow Up by Matt Richtel is that modern adolescence is a unique experience drawing on ancient evolutionary features. Throughout history, teenagers have served as society's boundary pushers and innovators. Yet, today's teens face new challenges: earlier puberty, information overload, and social media amplifying their existing emotional states. Their brains are literally wired during adolescence to prioritize strangers over parents and seek novelty over safety. And while physical risks have plummeted, contemporary teens seem to be turning inward, exploring identity and meaning like few generations before them. This inward turn, combined with the realities of modern life, bears risks such as an increase in mental health issues. but it also holds the potential for immense progress. The key is understanding that teenage rebellion serves an essential function, testing tomorrow's possibilities while adults cling to yesterday's certainties. Rather than fixing teens, we must support their natural role as agents of human evolution. All right, that's it for this Blink. We really hope you enjoyed it. If you have a moment, please take the time to leave us a rating. We always appreciate your feedback. And I'll see you in the next Blink.